Hey guys, when it comes to real estate, what's your default position?
That's what we're talking about today.
Welcome to the Utah Real Estate Show podcast, the show where two agents and a lender teach real estate best practices by talking through mistakes we've seen and made.
So here's a couple different ways that you can look at this or help remedy this. Because
how you should have done it in the first place, right?
Yeah, because Jason it's a default. So he has right to that earnest money and he has the right to sue. He may not be able to sue for performance, but he can now go and sue and take him to court for another $5,000 to pay for that.
Right, because he can show damages
like that. Exactly.
But who wants to be in court? What a miserable way to spend your day.
And you're still trying to sell your house.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Utah Real Estate Show. I am Tyler Kazera, Utah Real Estate Agent.
Jason Christiansen, mortgage lender.
Eric Wist, Utah Real Estate Agent. We have a great episode tonight. Our special guest, Peter Christensen, he is the CEO of UCAR, the Utah County Association of Realtors. He was unable to make it tonight. Super smart guy. Hopefully we'll have him on another episode when his schedule's a little bit more free.
Yeah. We kind of teased it in the open, but tonight we're talking about default.
Yeah.
We're talking about the real estate purchase contract, or sometimes we say REPC for short.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about Section 16.
And this is the legal one.
Oh, it's a fearful section. It is one you never want to be in. If you have no idea what Section 16 is, pat yourself on the back right now.
Yes.
Because this means that you have not run afoul of a contract. Section 16 is about breaking the contract.
Yes.
And what happens
not
when
voiding, not backing out. Breaking. Right. So really quick, we're not going to read the whole thing for you, but basically it outlines if a buyer breaks the contract, there are three options. And if a seller breaks the contract, there are three options. They're pretty similar.
They're very similar.
Now, as we're talking about this, make sure if you have a situation, drop it in the comments below. Go tell us that if you've had a crazy default situation or a break.
Or a random question. Would this apply?
Yeah. So really quick, let's just talk about what those are. First, we talk all the time about earnest money. Mm-hmm. And so
crucial.
If somebody breaks the contract, the other party gets the earnest money.
That's the idea. That's
the first basic tenet of what earnest money is.
Yes.
And in 16, that is a reinforcement. Section 16 is a reinforcement of that principle. If you break the contract as a buyer, the seller gets the earnest money. If you break it as a seller, the buyer gets the earnest.
Now, we've talked a little bit about this before in previous sections of the REPC where it talks about buyer default, seller default on
Section 8.
On Section 8, which is due diligence and financing. We're not going over that right now because it depends on how the contract is written, depending on which section is kind of applying to situations. And this is going to be kind of broad best case scenarios or best worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
Most common scenario, I guess you would say, maybe.
One differentiation, if the buyer backs out, seller keeps earnest money. If the seller backs out, the buyer gets their earnest money back and a sum equal. Because the buyer's saying, hey, it's worth this much. I'm willing to put in this much. The seller says, yeah, I agree to that. And if I back out, I'll cough up that much back to you.
Correct.
So that's your first cure on both sides.
Yeah, so what's a good example of some possible defaults that would happen?
Anytime you go past one of the voidable sections and then cancel for that section. So even due diligence, you're like, oh man, we found out that
there's termites or there's something crazy that happens.
Yeah, you did your inspection.
You're past the due diligence deadline.
Yep.
And now you back out for due diligence. You're
you
breaking
could be in
so sorry. Keep my earnest money. Good luck selling it to someone else, right?
Yeah, that's how that goes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those other two pieces, and then let's get into some examples. Eric was talking
so
about.
The second one.
Yeah.
You leave the earnest money where it is. You say, no. This transaction's still happening. I'm taking you to court. You will sell. You will buy. Whichever one.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Sue for performance.
That's the legal phrase. Sue for performance, and that means like, I am suing Jason because you and I have an agreement. You're going to sell me that house, or you're going to buy this house. The whole reason the
contract was there. That's why we have it in writing. Mm-hmm. Yes. Legal parties of legal age.
And it could be things like, well, I mean, whatever. Ultimately, it's the buy or sell that house.
Yep.
It could be maintenance and different things on the house, but ultimately, it's about selling that house. Mm-hmm. So suing for performance means I'm going to make the other party. I'm going to have a judge compel the other party to do what they agreed to do in the first place.
Complete the contract. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the second option. Okay. Now the third option is you say, to heck with the earnest money.
Go ahead, have it back.
Now I'm really going to hit you. And it is as if you really, any damage that you suffer outside of a real estate contract, if Aric wrecked my car, for example, that I've suffered damage. And I would sue Aric for the price of the car or for the damages, the medical expenses, whatever. That is a lawsuit.
Mm-hmm. And that's the remedy everything else takes besides real estate, which is kind of a magical thing about the contract.
Yeah, the contract is a special thing. Most people don't realize, contract self-remedies with earnest money. It self-heals, which is the great thing. Even if somebody screws up miserably, most of the time...
Hopefully, if you've written the contract right.
Yeah, most of the time. The earnest money is going to be the satisfying remedy in that situation. Yep. But if something really goes over the top, and we're going to talk about 2 cases tonight. If something really goes over the top, you may elect to hit the nuclear option, which is 16.1 or 16.23. Or C. C is what it is. It's C.
C, APC.
And that is... here's your earnest money. See you in court. That's what that one is.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about let's talk about the buyer side first.
Okay.
So
you just talk about story time.
Yeah, let's do story time. Is it Aric? You have the
story time
with
story time's so much fun.
Story time with Aric on the buyer.
Okay, so here's one that's a very real case scenario that could happen. I'm gonna buy a house from Jason. It's a $500,000 house. Average price home right now, single family. Go through, look at the house. I have a home inspection done, which we always recommend. The home inspector goes over to Jason's house and sees that it's not been maintained properly. And the furnace is squeaking and rattling and about to fall apart. And maybe it even does fall apart. The heat doesn't turn on. Who knows? Okay.
For whatever reason.
Whatever. I come back and say, well, I still want the house. I still am okay purchasing it at that price. But Jason, I want you to go and replace that furnace and I'll buy the house. Now, most scenarios, the agent goes to Jason and his agent goes, hey, Jason, this is what you got to do. Bad luck, but yeah, I'll go ahead and replace that furnace and then we'll just follow through with the contract and be done.
So how much does a furnace cost? That's a question.
Let's say 10 grand.
It's reasonable. So I've got $5,000 and now I have a $10,000 expense.
$5,000 in earnest money.
Yeah,
$5,000 in earnest money, which probably hasn't even been released to me because there's still not at their due diligence deadline because they're doing a good job and they had the home inspection early. Mm-hmm. So they can back out for whatever reason. Am I willing to incur a $10,000 cost to a buyer who may or may not perform?
So now this is where you guys make your decision on what we've seen is if you have something that doesn't understand the contract, they may recommend, hey, go ahead, Jason. They love the house. They're going to do it. No problem. Be done with it. Well, today's day and age, who knows when you're going to get that part? It may be a month. Appliances, everything's backlogged on stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Jason now orders his furnace. They say it's going to take another 3 weeks to get here. He lays down 10 grand to buy that furnace to get it here. We have to extend the contract 3 or 4 more weeks because the deadlines the settlement deadline's not going to match up now. Mm-hmm. And worst case scenario, I can't perform on the loan.
Dog dies.
I get in a car accident.
Emotional storm.
Whatever. Now I default because I cannot follow through on my loan. Jason...
I'm short on funds now because I just paid $10,000.
Yeah, he's incurred a $10,000, this is important, damage.
Yes. And I've released $5,000 earnest money, which is all I put down to him, who's now spent $10,000 to get.
So, good job. You didn't sell your house and now you're $5,000.
So, and then on the one hand, I got a new furnace and whatever, maybe it was fine. But what if this put me at a hard spot? So now I'm going to sue Aric for performance? Like he lost his job,
but you can't because the lender cannot qualify him for a loan for something. Maybe it was a car accident.
Well, you can't qualify him for a $500,000 loan. Well, but somewhere
are we past the financing deadline?
Yeah,
we are.
So now it is. Yeah, it doesn't matter what it was reason.
He breached out.
Yeah, it's there. So here's a couple different ways that you can look at this or help remedy this because
how you should have done it in the first place, right?
Yeah, because Jason had. it's a default. So he has right to that earnest money, and he has the right to sue. He may not be able to sue for performance, but he can now go and sue and take him to court for another $5,000 to pay for that.
Right, because he can show damages
like that. Exactly.
But who wants to be in court? What a miserable way to spend your day.
And you're still trying to sell your house.
Yeah.
You still have to deal with that.
So what should we have done?
So
what do good agents do, Aric?
A good agent would have said, hey, Jason, your furnace is junk. You got to do this. The buyer is asking for you to replace this. Jason's agent would have been like, hey, okay, great. We'll go ahead and replace that furnace, but we want you to put up another $5,000 earnest money, and for all of that earnest money to go non-refundable at the time that I have to now purchase that furnace.
That the cost is actually incurred.
Mm-hmm. So now he pays $10,000 to get that furnace, delivers in 3-4 weeks. His earnest money for $10,000 is already non-refundable. It's already there. It covers him in case something happens to the buyer. That way, same story happens. I default. Jason has $10,000 to pay for the furnace that was asked upon from the buyer.
Yeah.
And
now I hope your dog dies because I got my furnace.
And the damages are as little as possible.
Yes.
And this is why a good agent is worth, almost whatever you pay for him, right? Because in this case, the risk was managed because the agent knew what was going on. A lot of agents out there would not have detected this risk, and they would have allowed Jason to proceed into a transaction where now you're bearing the risk.
Right. And as a good agent, you can just say, this is the risk. What do you want? Do you need coverage? Like maybe I knew the furnace was crap. I was going to replace it anyway.
Yeah.
But make sure they're informed. Make sure they know what they're getting.
Well, make sure they know. He may not understand. Hey, do you want this? No, I'm good. Well, then all of a sudden they back out, and now the guy turns back around to his agent. Hey, you never told me that this was what actually could happen. Now I'm in the whole $10,000. I'm in the whole $5,000. Right. I don't want you working for me anymore. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, which comes back to our previous episode of ethics.
Yes. We'll put where's it go? Up over on this side?
I don't know.
Yeah, up over Eric's head.
Wherever Tyler puts it. So that's one example, and that's actually a very low risk, low dollar one that could happen. I mean, you get into, it could be crazy numbers. It could be
hundreds of thousands.
Well, let's take the other side now.
Yeah.
Right. So we had story time with Aric. Thank you, Aric.
Yay.
Now we're gonna have story time with Jason about a transaction where the seller is.
This is a doozy. So get your juice box and your blankie. Okay, so this is what happened. Contractor finds a sweet deal. FSBO, for sale by owner, gets an offer accepted. He knows what's going on. He actually has friends and family in the industry. So there's no agents, gets an offer, gets a sweet deal, and it's got an extended close date because he's going to remodel this house in its entirety. And he starts spending the money to do it.
So the contractor's the buyer or the seller?
Contractor's the buyer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and he's bringing. So what kind of things? Like he's bringing in like stone from.
So the seller has allowed him to.
No. He's not doing anything to the house yet.
Okay.
But he's architectural plans.
Okay, he's got it all ready. He's purchased stuff. As soon as it closes,
he's getting his plan.
Bam,
ready.
It's done. Because he's going to turn around and sell it.
No, he's going to live in it. It's going to be freaking sweet.
Cool.
Okay. Amazing.
All right. So in the meantime, seller starts talking to an agent friend of hers. Mm-hmm. Agent says, I can sell it for more and close it quicker. She says, okay. So get under contract, sell it. Dude A, contract is still open. He goes to check on the house. She sold it to someone else.
Oh, man. This hurts.
And so
oh, boy.
He sues for damages or performance.
That he's incurred.
He's incurred. And he can show these. And the other thing he can show is like, I've lost this much money on this house. These are the plans. Here's like an appraisal at this future plans of what it's worth. Mm-hmm. I can't buy another house and do the same thing to it. Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep. And that is only the damages financial damages incurred at the time. He will also be entitled to reasonable attorney fees, which is going to be probably substantial on something like
attorneys
this.
aren't cheap.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
And so in this case, obviously, like, earnest money is not going to do the job. Like, no matter how much earnest money was on the line, like, it's just not going to do the job. The second option, which was sue for performance, like keep it in escrow, keep the earnest money in escrow, sue for performance.
What's you going to do, unsell it from the
Yeah,
other
how are you
people?
going to unsell it? Like, that's not going to work. So the only option really available to this contractor is, the nuclear option, is to go into a court, talk to a judge and say, dude, look how I got screwed, man. This sucks. And I got $50,000 of materials sitting on pallets out in front of this house that, the Joneses who've moved in, they have no idea. They're like, why is all this stuff building up in my driveway? Man, that's got to suck.
Yeah. So one thing I want to add really quick is this isn't legal advice. This is story time. I think Peter might say something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important. We should all say that. This is not legal advice.
Nope. Not legal advice.
There we go.
Get a hold of your real estate attorneys and talk to them when these situations arise.
Yes.
Talk to them if you think you might be in a situation like this prior to doing it.
Yes.
But know what the contract is asking and expecting before you sign it.
Yep.
Yeah, we're just going through the contract here today. If you do need a real estate attorney, you're welcome to talk to us, and we'll gladly bounce you to someone who knows much more about the law than we do.
Well, and that's the purpose of these videos, is to kind of break some of that down. Because if you might read that, and if, say, you're working with an agent who doesn't understand the contract, but you watch our video, you're like, hey, doesn't this kind of mean this? Now you can ask some questions. You can sit there and ask a little bit. Know where to go. Know how to talk to. Sure. Hey, this is a potential issue.
I really like the idea of someone sitting down in a real estate attorney's office and saying, I saw these three guys on the internet, and they said, fill in the blank.
Your attorney will probably charge you more. But
probably.
A pain in the butt fee or something.
We want to hear that story, so put it down below.
All right. So what did we learn?
Well, my key takeaway is don't be an idiot in the contract. Don't break contracts. That's a bad idea.
Yeah. It's important to have earnest money that's sufficient to cover any reasonable damages or transaction. Cover the earnest money that you're putting down in a domino transaction. Cover the repairs that need to be made. Make sure your assets are covered.
We like stories. We're not lawyers. Just remember that. Hey, Jason.
Yes, Eric?
So how much are you suing that buyer for?
Let's not even talk about that today.
If you want to get in touch with us, shoot us a text at 801-228-7687. Make sure you mention the show. You can email us at theutahrealestateshow@gmail.com. You can watch this show on YouTube, and you can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you learned something, or if you really love this show, give us a like on YouTube and drop a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. The Utah Real Estate Show is a production of Hive Collective at Presidio Real Estate, with support from Security Home Mortgage. The NMLS number for Security Home Mortgage is 178787. The NMLS number for Jason Christiansen is 240472, Equal Housing Lender. Not only is this not legal or investment advice, but you should definitely talk to a pro before you make any real estate decision. Every situation is different and should be considered in context. Copyright Jason Christiansen, Eric Wist, and Tyler Kazare. All rights reserved. Talk to you next week.
Guys, now that I've got your attention. When it comes to real estate, what's your default position?
I don't even know.
No, your default position. We're talking about default. That's what we're talking about today. You guys both got to do that.
Oh, okay.
That's what we're talking about today. The red bars are going up and down. Okay.
They're white.
Oh, you better be careful. It's realtor.
Oh,
Realtor.
Okay. He is the CEO of UCAR, the Utah Association of Real Estate. Utah County Association of Real Estate. There's a reason why people say UCAR. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I'm starting it. Sorry.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Why?
How about no?
Because I can play the music in the background and then we'll be singing it.
What? But why? Why?
That's the out.
Why?
That's not too bad.